Warning. The information shared in these conversations and videos are intended for general knowledge and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered as legal advice or professional guidance. Additionally, any documentation or references to specific content are solely for the purpose of discussion and understanding. It does not imply endorsement, promotion, or support of said content. The views expressed in these videos and/or conversation are those of the individuals involved and do not represent any official stance or opinion. The content you are about to experience may contain strong language, including explicit words and phrases. This language is used for artistic expression and may be integral to the storyline or character development. It is important to note that the use of such language does not endorse or promote offensive behavior. Viewer discretion is advised, and please enjoy the show responsibly. Disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. The Canadian Copyright Act, Section 29, allows an individual to use copyright-protected materials when creating a new work, such as a mashup, and to post the new work online on a site like YouTube. Fair dealing provision for specific purposes like research, private study, education, parody, satire, criticism, review, and news reporting.
Step up, step up! Yeah! We pledge! We pledge!
They can't even do this because you're handicapping them by giving them free handouts.
Because they're snapping
Yeah, but
turtles.
a turtle is still a turtle, dude.
Mind locked and loaded. Truth on my blade, every line's exploded. You swing your words, I counter with precision. Battle of reason, this is my mission. Raise your fist, let them know. No. Raise your voice, let it blow. Woo! We crash our swords of reason.
That's interesting. Again, it's HIPAA violation.
You can cope laugh as much as you want, but you just made up an entire fairy tale and presented it as though it was true.
I'm gonna look something up real quick. Just give me anything that shows.
No fear, no chain, no treason. We clash our swords of reason. Step back, I'm a scholar and a fighter.
Do you see more people that are influenced by the 764, or do you see more beta man?
I'm solid gold. Raise your fist, let them know. Raise your voice, let it blow. Woo!
Did good research, finding there are flood stories that have been told before Genesis. Excellent. What is that?
Chain, no treason. We clash our
I'm the one that is the carrier. It is my choice. Hello?
If you let me finish, you might hear what I'm saying.
I'm the one that has to spend 9 months.
Hold on.
Merely assert that there is a necessity.
So again, a mere assertion is just an assertion, and there's no justification there.
Were to establish a new nation, a new identity by any means possible, is that fascist?
Sorry, one more time, just because the chat popped up and I read it like an idiot.
When you legalize drugs, police become lighter on crime.
What?
Can't see into the future. And so what we have to look at is the preponderance of evidence.
Never do it as an obligation to strengthen our society because
we clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through lies, no retreat. No fear, no chains, no treason. We clash our swords of reason.
Welcome, everybody, to Swords of Reason right here on the SpeakeaZy show. Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. This is where logic meets passion. All right. If you're new here, the format is simple. Each debater gets 10 minutes for their opening statement, followed by 5 minutes of uninterrupted rebuttals. After that, we're going to enter the arena for a full hour of back and forth debate. This is where the arguments can clash and the iron sharpens the iron. And then finally, each side delivers a 5-minute closing statement to lock in their case. When that's done, we move into 30-minute Q&A. I'll drop the Q&A in the chat there for everyone, but keep in mind that the Super Chats, PayPals, Cash Apps, and the Rumble rants will take priority. And if they fill up the entire 30 minutes, we may not get to the free chat questions. So if there's something you want guaranteed to be asked, make sure you send it through one of those priority options. And then once the formal debate wraps up, we're going to open the doors for the Chaos and Chill panel. That's where the community can hop in, challenge the debaters, ask follow-ups if the debaters choose to stick around, because that part is optional for them. But it's always where things get wild regardless. Today's debate prompt: laws that enforce Christian values are not anti-Christian. And taking the affirmative, we have KungFuJoe, an OG fighting game player from the arcade golden age, coming from a time when competition was raw, skill was proven, and excuses got exposed fast. Since entering the debate scene, he's made a name for himself as a Christian firebrand, battling through heated topics like evolution, atheism, and feminism. After making noise in Wix Discord server, he's now stepping onto bigger stages, looking to test himself further and continue his crusade. And you can find his link in the description below. And taking the negative tonight, we have Vigilante, the voice behind the Vigilante TV, a returning presence in the Swords of Reason arena, known for sharp political commentary and high-energy gaming streams. He's built a following over on Twitch with additional content on YouTube. If you enjoy bold takes and unfiltered analysis, you're in for a good one tonight, and you can find his channel also linked in the description below. With that being said, we're going to move right into the opening statements. KungFuJoe, whenever you're ready for your opening statement, I will start the timer up with your voice.
Thank you, SpeakeaZy, for having me back, and thanks for Vigilante for bringing this prompt here tonight. I've had a little bit of a hiatus, but man, it is good to be back, and I'm ready to have some fun here. Woo! I'm super pumped for this. So with that, let's go ahead and cut right into this. So I'm KungFuJoe, and you may not know me now, but you will. That's all I got to say about that. So let's just cut right to my opening statement here. All right, everybody. First off, I want to just say that shame can be a very strong teaching tool, and it is one that is promoted by Christian ethics. And that is what I'm here to do today for our dear friend Vigilante. 1 Timothy 5:20 says, to rebuke those who persist in sin in the presence of all, so that the rest may stand in fear. My opponent has knowledge of Christ and rejects him, so he falls under that category. My goal is to shame my opponent out of his foolish position and into divine liturgy by making him realize what a stupid fucking argument that he brought tonight. I want to point out my opponent chose this prompt, and I got to say he's got a big problem on his hands. It's a little verse called Matthew 16:18. This is where Jesus tells Peter, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. The gates of hell represent the powers of death and evil. Christ promised these powers would never overcome or destroy his church. If my opponent wants to claim that the church failed for over 1,000 years by endorsing Christian law, he has to explain how that doesn't break Christ's promise and concede the debate. For over 1,000 years, the pre-schism church especially universally supported laws against abortion, homosexual acts, adultery, fornication, infanticide, public idolatry, and restricted divorce to defend marriage. Romans 13:4 tells us that the governing authority is God's servant who bears the sword to punish evildoers. So with that, Vigilante, you're in a hell of a bind here tonight, buddy. I can't wait for you to explain yourself out of it. Be my guest.
All right. And that's it for your opening? Joe?
Yep, that's it. I can see the rest of my
perfect.
time.
Perfect. Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to Vigilante. Vigilante, whenever you're ready for your opening, I will start the timer up with your voice. You're muted on the StreamYard.
It always happens, at least once, to somebody. All right, Peter drew his sword in Gethsemane to defend Christ in person, putting his body and life at risk. There's never been a purer motive in all of history. And Christ told him to put it away, and then warned that those who take the sword die by it. And then reached out and healed the very man that Peter wounded. Not long before that, James and John wanted to call fire down on a Samaritan village that rejected Jesus, and Christ turned to them and rebuked them for it. No fire, no fight. just took his disciples and walked to another village. Right cause, right loyalty, wrong spirit. So here's the standard tonight. It's Christ's, not mine. An act is anti-Christian when it contradicts his teaching, corrodes his church, or obstructs the mission. He applied that test to his own disciples, acting on his behalf, out of love for him. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Joe hates Christ. Peter didn't hate him either. But his sincerity didn't save him from being wrong. That's not tonight's question, though. Tonight's question is whether Christ told anyone to pick up the sword on his behalf. And I'm going to prove from Scripture, the church fathers, councils and saints that he never did. Christian anthropology is built on self-determination, not as a political preference, but as doctrine on how humans ought be. God left them in the power of their own free choice. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curses. Now choose life. Choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. Christ operates in this way without exception. He stands at the door and knocks. He doesn't kick it in. When the crowd walks away, he turned to the disciples and asked, you do not want to leave too, do you? He didn't chase them down. When the rich young ruler refused Christ, he let him walk away. He had every power available to force the outcome and used none of it. Paul tells Corinth to give not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. He also tells Philemon the same thing. Any favor would not seem forced, but would be voluntary. Peter tells the elders to shepherd, not because you must, but because you are willing. In the next verse, he says, not lording over them, entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. If a man does not steal because of criminal consequences, he doesn't magically become righteous. He becomes deterred. And Paul just told you that's worth nothing. All you have done is produced legal compliance and taught non-believers Christianity is about fear of penalty, not about Christ. This is not my innovation either. Christendom said Christians above all are forbidden to correct sinners by force. Maximus built his whole Christology on a will has to be free to be saved at all. Synergy means God does not save man without his consent. If God won't force it, I'd like to know where the state got a warrant that God declined to sign. Paul's verdict on external regulation isn't just that it is insufficient. It has it has an appearance of wisdom and no power at all against the thing that it targets. Paul names the exact same issue later, writing to Timothy, having a form of godliness but denying its power. And Christ doesn't just name it, he rebukes it publicly. You clean the outside of the cup, but the inside, they are full of greed and self-indulgence. You are like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, dead within. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. People look out at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And the mechanism he actually promises is never a statute. I will put my law in their minds and write on their hearts. I will give you a new heart. I will remove from you your heart of stone. The letter kills, but the spirit gives life. Joe's own tradition says this better than I can. The church is a hospital, not a courtroom. That is Christendom's line, not mine. Canons are therapeutic, applied by a confessor to one soul with discernment, moderated by okanema. A criminal statute is the exact opposite, uniform, punitive, applied by the unwilling strangers who have never met them. Legislate Christian morality and you don't extend the hospital, you get church as a courtroom. And that has a track record. I'd invite Joe to check the reviews before he orders it again. A courtroom is the one thing Joe's tradition says it must never become. This is an inference. It's the third temptation. Satan showed Christ all the kingdoms of the world, their glory, and offered them to him. And Christ said no. When the crowd tried to seize him and make him king by force, he withdrew to a mountain alone. He was asked to settle a legal dispute over inheritance and refused the seat outright. Quote, "Who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Standing in front of Pilate with actual political power on the table, he said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight. And he said to his own disciples how authority is supposed to work among them. The rulers of the Gentiles lord over you, not so with you. Paul carried this exact same principle onto the mission itself. The weapons we fight with are not weapons of this world. Our struggles is not of flesh and blood. Dvorsky saw this whole argument and wrote 2,000 years later, the Grand Inquisitor's charge against Christ is a miracle. Is that he refused miracle, mystery, and authority and left men free. And the Inquisitor has corrected that mistake and taken up the sword Christ turned down for their own good. Dvorsky's point is that the Inquisitor is completely sincere, and his sincerity is exactly what made him the traitor in the story. His own churches run this experiment more than any communion on earth. Emperor Leo III and Constantine V after him enforced by imperial decree that what they believed to be Christian values straight out of Exodus 20, no graven images. The result was over a century of persecution, and the church's own saints were on the receiving end of it. John of Damascus wrote that it is not for the emperors to legislate for the church. Then there's the typos of Constantinians in 648, an imperial law regulating Christian doctrine. Maximus the Confessor refused to obey it, and a Christian emperor enforcing Christian law had his tongue cut out and right hand cut off and sent him into exile to die there. The church canonized the man who broke the law and condemned the doctrine the law was protecting. In 1872, the Council of Constantinople condemned ethnophiliism, the fusion of ethnicity and church, as heresy, not as unwise, as heresy. And Symphonia doesn't save you here either. Justinian's 6th novella described priesthood as an empire as two distinct gifts with two distinct spheres, not one enforcing the other's morality, though words in his own tradition, when the distinction collapses, is Caesaropapism. And it's not a compliment. We must obey God rather than human beings only makes sense as a sentence if state law and God's law can actually come apart. Joe's whole case requires that they cannot. His own history says otherwise. Paul's own verdict on what enforcement costs is blunt. God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. Christ named the identifying mark of his disciples, and it was never legislative success. It was, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. The prescribed mode is salt and light out in the open, leaven working invisibly from the inside, never the sword. The mechanism of repentance is God's kindness, and perfect love drives out fear. Coercive law inverts every single one of those. The persecutor never thinks he's the villain. Paul didn't, which is exactly why we meant it for Christ has never been and never will be the test. And Christ doesn't leave the alternative vague either. He says, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek also. That's the shape of responsibility he actually prescribed. And it isn't the one Joe is defending here tonight. And I see the rest of my time.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we are going to get into the rebuttal round here. So each debater will have 5 minutes uninterrupted to directly respond to their opponent's opening arguments. So it's not a back and forth yet, no interjections. And then when your 5 minutes are up, we'll go to the other side and then we'll get into open floor. So with that being said, we're going to hand the mic back to KungFuJoe, and whenever you're ready for your 5 minutes of uninterrupted rebuttal, I will start the timer up with your voice.
SpeakeaZy, is it optional for me to use my time to interrogate Vigilante?
Yeah, so some people have used their rebuttal time to ask questions. If you want to do that, that's totally up to you, yeah. And then Vigilante can do the same with his time.
Yeah, if we want to do cross-ex, that's perfectly fine.
Sure. Okay, let's go ahead and do it. So, Vigilante, I guess it would be fair to say that you're doing an internal critique of Christianity here.
That would be fair to say, yes.
Sure. Okay, so And you understand that even pre-schism, for the first 1,000 years, that the church did endorse laws into practice, right?
Yes.
Right. Is that a failure of the church?
Yes.
So Christ lied in
doctrine.
Matthew 16:18.
Read that part. Let's read that part again. Hold on.
Yeah. So in Matthew 16:18, it says, he puts his hand on Peter and he says, I say to you, Peter, that you are the rock upon which I build my church, and the gates of hell shall never prevail against it. Meaning that if the church as a whole participates in any heresies, that is a failure of the church. But Christ said that cannot happen. So how do you reconcile this?
So people are fallible, and people can make mistakes. Just because the church at one point in time and up until pretty much the fall of feudalism endorsed.
Wait, you just said that the church as a whole failed, right?
I wouldn't.
No, you said the church as a whole failed. You didn't say individual people failed. You said the church as a whole failed.
The leaders of the church are human, right?
The church is the living body of Christ. Do you know what that means?
Yes.
Yeah, that means it's a congregation of people that upholds it. It's not a building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to say that congregation of people got it wrong for over 1,000 years.
People are only as good as their leaders.
Bro, this is in direct contradiction to the passage I just gave you in Matthew 16:18.
Do you believe
so Christ is a liar?
Infallible?
No. Your claim here is that the church failed in its mission for over 1,000 years.
Because of the leadership, yes.
Yeah, Christ commissioned the leadership. He laid his hands on Peter and made him first among equals. The apostles went forth and became the first bishops.
That is true, yes. But
okay, they founded his church, and then you said after they founded it, it failed for 1,000 years consistently.
This was partially the fault of the church, because whatever. Hold on, the
debate over, bro.
The person, no, it's not. Because
you do. You have to concede. You have to tell us that Christ lied.
It's not that Christ lied. It's that people are fallible. Christ wasn't saying that people are
infallible. The church is a living body of Christ. It's a body of people. It's not a building.
Yeah, the church is the body, obviously. Yes,
made up of people.
Any entity that is of people is only as good as their leadership.
Christ chose the leadership through the laying of hands, right? Just like Paul said, right? It's a continuation, an unbroken chain of the laying of hands. So are you going to tell me that Christ laid his hands on the wrong person? How can he do that?
No, I would say that the people that they chose afterward, that were chosen,
that's in contradiction with Matthew 16:18. Again, bro, you're crashing into this wall over and over again. This is barely the first 10 minutes of the debate, and it is over. It's over. Do you want to talk about something else?
I mean, you're bringing up one verse that
that's all it takes, bro. Problem. We take the Bible as in its entirety. We don't single anything out.
I mean, Christ himself, and Paul and Peter all railed against the idea of using the church to create laws.
Do
you not acknowledge that?
Hold on, is protecting the innocent consistent with Christian morality?
I would say
even if you have to use lethal force.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So if you put that into law, how is that anti-Christian?
So there is a difference between using.
How is that anti-Christian, sir? This is my time for interrogation. Answer that.
It's when you do it as a
Answer this, and then it'll be your
Yeah.
turn next. Yeah.
when you do it with the purpose of solely when you do it with the purpose of solely enforcing Christian ethics, that's when it becomes anti-Christian.
So Christianity
All right.
is a
Well,
system of
that's
morality. Yeah,
hold up,
sure.
hold up. That's 5 minutes there, so we'll save the rest there for the open floor. So we're gonna hand the mic over to you, Vigilante, and if you want to do the same thing to ask questions, you're more than welcome. And if you want to just do a rebuttal, you're more than welcome for that as well. I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Yeah, okay. So you acknowledge that Christ himself, Peter, and Paul all said that we should not make laws for the Gentiles, correct?
I don't agree that they said that means like when we're in the majority, right? If Christians are in the majority, they shouldn't form society around their ethics. There's nothing that says that.
Okay. Are you incapable of separating Christianity from secular ethics? Do you not acknowledge that secularism was literally created for that purpose? Because it was created by a Christian.
What Christian created secular ethics?
Yeah, secularism was created by, hold on, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Secularism was created by George Jacob Holy Oak. I guess that's how that's pronounced.
What kind of Christian was he?
Everything I've looked for doesn't fucking give me a.
Okay.
He was from 19th century Britain, so I'm going to assume Catholic.
Okay, well, I'm not a Catholic. You're not debating a Catholic tonight.
Well, the point is the fact that secularism was literally created for that for the purpose that we're talking about.
I'm not a Catholic.
By a Christian.
No, I don't consider them Christian. Sorry.
Okay. So are you incapable of utilizing your ethical framework without enforcing what you believe could be Christian values?
Listen, I follow the Orthodox perspective. I do not believe that the Catholics are fully in the truth. So I don't take their standard. So that's not a standard that's going to work on me.
Okay. Well, do you reject the standard from your own church saying that the church shouldn't create laws? And that the members of the church shouldn't create laws?
Well, so your problem here is that they didn't really create laws I don't know if that they created laws, but they endorsed laws.
So I use this quote in my opening from Christendom, or I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but Christians are forbidden to correct sinners by force, persuasion, not compulsion. Do you disagree with that claim?
Yeah, no, there are certain things that should not be enforced by law, right? Like we shouldn't jail people for maybe having thoughts of lust or something like that, right? There are degrees of sin, and some are in self-defense, right? So a lot of the ones that I'm in favor of that the church, the church supported for over 1,000 years were like laws against abortion, laws against homosexual acts, laws against adultery, fornication, infanticide, public idolatry, things like that.
Okay, so those are some of the things that you would be okay with criminalizing then, right?
Yeah, because historically they were criminalized by the church that Christ gave us. Yes.
Can you think of any non-Christian reason to criminalize any of those things?
I'm sure you could, but there wouldn't be any epistemic source for doing that. You would just be like, well, ultimately it's just my preference to do it.
Well, that's the whole point of making laws, is because they negatively affect society. So you'd have to show that these things actually negatively impact society.
Yeah, well, Christianity is a system of morals, right? And laws are usually there to reflect morality. So if laws are there to reflect and endorse morality, support the certain morals, then why would Christianity be excluded from that? It's a system of morality, right?
It is a system of morality, yes. And you can, when you have other reasons behind that something is wrong, there is no problem with making something illegal. But when you are purely making something illegal based off of a religious value, especially a Christian religious value, according to your own doctrine and your own church, it is wrong to do so.
Okay, if it is wrong to do so, then you're saying that the church failed in its mission and therefore Christ lied.
All right, so that is the end of the 5 minutes there. So that's going to wrap up the rebuttal cross-examination round there. Before we move into the open floor, I just want to talk to the audience real quick. If you're watching right now, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and also subscribe to tonight's debaters. All right, their links are in the description. We host all kinds of debates here on Swords of Reasons, politics, culture, ethics, religion, internet topics, anything where reasoning and passion can collide. So if you enjoy this format, make sure you stay locked in because we have a lot more coming for you. Also, a reminder for the live chat. After the closing statements, we're going to be doing a 30-minute Q&A. So the Q&A is already dropped there if you want to put the questions right in from the Q&A and chat. But remember, the PayPals and Cash Apps will be number 1 in priority. Then the Super Chats and Rumble Rants will be number 2. And if those fill up the whole 30 minutes, we may not get to the free ones. So if there's something you really want answered, send it through one of those options and we'll make sure it gets asked. And then finally, thank you to both our debaters for being here tonight and bringing your perspectives into the arena. Whenever one of you is ready to get the open floor started, just go ahead and hop in and I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Yeah, let's fucking go. So anyway, Vigilante, I don't do sola scriptura, right? I made sure that I cross-referenced my Bible passages with the Orthodox Church's understanding, the same church that operated for the first 1,000 years for sure. And I'm using the first 1,000 years because it's pre-schism. So there's only one church to blame for anything here, right? So that church, the one that I still look through the lens for scripture of, states that these things were endorsed by the readings of Christ through the apostles, right? I want to know, what is the authority from which you're reading scripture from?
So it is partially sola scriptura, and then there is also, like I said, there is also stuff from the priestic and Orthodox church that I am also using
partially sola scriptura. So let me tell you, if this is an internal critique, you got to wash that shit right out, because we don't do sola scriptura, buddy. That's a heresy.
Well, I don't exactly know the sources to go to other than one of my local Eastern Orthodox churches to fucking go through all of the verses with it and find how
cross-reference the main. You could cross-reference the stance of the entire church on the internet. You could just look it up. Anyone here watching can just look it up.
So they have a stance on every single verse in the Bible.
Correct. Yeah, they put the thing together.
Cool. I actually learned something. I was genuinely not aware of that. I genuinely did not know they put out their interpretation on every single verse.
Yeah, they are in charge of maintaining the interpretation, and they have an unbroken 2,000-year tradition of that. So, like I'm saying, Vigilante, I'm not here to, embarrass you out of like any maliciousness or anything. I'm doing it out of love. Okay. I want you to come back to Christ. This lesson is good for you right now. Okay. I would have to say you probably have to concede the prompt at this point.
So here, let's take a few of the things that I brought up that are from Paul, from Christ, and from Peter, right? And let's look them up. So let's see. Let's look up what the. Sorry, I'm trying to find one of the ones that actually.
Did you catch my my quote from Romans 13:4 in my opening? Romans 13:4 tells us the governing authority is God's servant who bears the sword to punish evildoers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like the state. Jesus also said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, which means that the earthly bodies of rulership have their own realm of authority.
Yes.
Correct. Right. So the model of Symphonia, which the Byzantine Empire operated under, was endorsed by the church, but you're saying that's a failure of the church, which means God is a liar. Is that what you came to tell us Christians tonight? That God lied to us?
I am not saying that God is a liar. I am saying that humans are fallible. There's a difference.
And Jesus Christ trusted the wrong humans, right? He didn't have the foresight to see that the people he was trusting to spread his church on earth.
I'm glad you got back to this, right? So we know that up until 313 AD, the history of the church is extremely sparse, right? So, which 313 AD is when Constantine fully legalized Christianity and made it the state religion of Rome. So who did the apostles appoint between then? Like who is the direct succession of the apostles?
There is a record of the laying of hands that goes all the way back to the apostles. Do you want the entire lineage for that 300-year period? Because it exists.
That is what I am asking for, yes.
Okay. All right. So you want me to go and pull that up for you. Let's see. Oops. So just to be clear, you're calling that into question, like you don't trust that is a thing that is a claim that my church makes?
I'm sure that it's a claim that the church makes. I'm just not sure that we can accurately track it. Because
we can. The church does say that the church has a record of it.
So the church does actually have a record of it.
It does.
So
I'll stand by that. I'll rest my reputation on it.
Okay. So my primary question is then, who did Peter himself actually anoint to be his successor?
Like I said, I don't know that like offhand, but like your argument here falls apart because like if you're going to tell me that the apostles made mistakes in who they chose to lay hands on and succeed in their path, that is still the church failing, which would still go back to Christ being a liar. You can't escape this.
So I actually was sent by my chat or from a mutual friend of ours, who the line of succession actually. So according to the Catholics specifically, the Catholics are the ones who have a succession from Peter. It was
we all do. Both churches do.
Well, I mean,
there was 1,000 years before the schism, dude. The schism was in 1054. You have to say that the church, that's why I picked the pre-schism era specifically for this debate, because there's only one church to pick on, right? You have to say that one church failed in its mission, ergo Christ is a liar. That's the argument you have to, you've basically the entailment of your argument tonight.
That I am not saying that Christ is a liar. I'm saying that humans are infallible. There is a difference.
Okay, we're looping again, dude. Christ trusted humans to carry out and build his church on earth and for it to be visible.
Okay, when Christ made that decision, do you think that when Christ was saying what you're talking about, did you think that he believed that humans would never make mistakes?
I didn't say that. I said the church as a whole would not fail. The church as a whole, dude. And the church as a whole supported all the laws that I listed earlier for over 1,000 years. This is the unfortunate bubble you're trapped in, Vigilante. You can't get out of it.
Like I said, this is
crazy
the
word,
failure.
bro.
The failure is not on the church as a whole. The failure is specifically on the leadership, who are the ones that drive the church forward, obviously.
Do you have a point against my argument?
I'm quite literally saying
Steelman my argument for me real quick. I need to make sure you know what I'm saying here.
Yes, you're saying that
you keep looping.
Because of the fact that Christ said that
commissioned humans,
commissioned humans in order to be the body of his church. And I deleted it now, but it was Matthew 16:18, I believe, that the church is infallible.
The church, not infallible, little branches. Okay, here's an analogy for you. There's a tree, right? The church is a tree. Now, individual branches on that tree can rot and fall off, but the tree is still intact. You get that? So individuals within the church, certain emperors, certain clergy may have done things that are antithetical to Christian morality, but that does not convict the church as a whole, which is what you're doing here tonight. You're saying the church as a whole for 1,000 years before the schism was antithetical to Christianity.
So I like that you use the tree analogy, right? So let's reverse this a little bit. When the roots of a tree are poisoned or have like root rot, right? The tree can still survive, correct?
What? So is the tree as a whole operating in the way Christ laid it out to do?
The roots would be the leadership, correct?
No, the roots. It's not the analogy with the tree is that the church as a whole remains infallible, not falling. Certain little branches, meaning individuals, certain little sects of Christianity, certain churches, certain emperors, even certain little periods, right, in little sections of the empire could have failed individually. That's a branch failing. That's not the tree failing. That's the point, the message I'm trying to get across here.
Yeah. So what I am saying is, like in your analogy, right? What I'm saying is that during that time frame, the leadership is the one that was failing. It doesn't mean the individual people
the succession of the laying of hands started by Christ failed. So Christ is a liar. Here we just looped again, bro. How many more times do you want to get off this ride yet? Let me know when. I'll take you for another ride if you want.
I mean, you do
Let's
acknowledge.
do it again. Go ahead. Restate the same stupid argument over again so I could loop you back to where we are.
So I mentioned this in my opening, right? So with Constance and I don't remember his name off the top of my head. I'm pulling it back up so I can reread this part directly for you. Give me like 30 seconds, if that.
Now, all the time in the world isn't going to help you out of this trap, bro.
So this was at the end of my opening, right? So with Emperor Leo and Constantine V, they did the whole making law, imperial decree based off of Christian values endorsed by the church, right? And then the typhos of Constance and 648, which was regulating Christian doctrine by law. And then you had people like Maximus the Confessor who refused to obey that law. And then in 1872, the church went back on all of it. Well, no, sorry, wrong date. But what ended up happening was that the church canonized Maximus the Confessor as a saint and rebuked and condemned the doctrine that the law was trying to protect. Do you not acknowledge that as a fact?
Yeah, sure. Was it what period was this again? Six what?
So this was 648.
Okay, in 648, did they have laws against abortion?
Probably not, because I don't know
Yes,
if we had the capability to do it.
Yeah, they did.
I would have to check on that because I'm not sure that we had the capability to do abortions back then without the woman dying.
Okay, they did. Did they have laws against public idolatry or homosexual acts?
Public idolatry, probably, yeah. Well, that was actually public idolatry is part of what I'm talking about, because that's the Exodus 2020 thing. And then the homosexual acts, most likely.
Yes. Okay. And these are laws that uphold Christian ethics. The church was doing them at the same time period as this point you're trying to make, which defeats whatever point you're trying to fucking make right now.
I'm talking about a time period where the doctrine of the church was canonized by law, which was endorsed by the church at that point in time. And then later on, the church went back and condemned that, and then named the person who spoke out against it as a saint.
No, look, all these things right here, I'm going to list you the things that were constant and universal within the church for the first 1,000 years. Ready? Abortion, laws against abortion, homosexual acts, adultery, fornication, infanticide, and public idolatry. Those were all laws that were universally supported by the church in the first 1,000 years. If that's anti-Christian, then the church failed. Ergo, Christ is a liar.
So these would be mistakes made by the leadership of the church.
The church as a whole supported these mistakes for 1,000 years. That's a pretty big mistake for a pretty long time, don't you think?
Okay, but you do realize that the church later on decided to acknowledge the fact that the church should not participate in making laws, correct?
When did the church stop participating in supporting laws? It didn't make laws. It suggested and supported laws to the governing body, right? That was the Symphonia model.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We agree that the church shouldn't have its own military or carry out acts of aggression. That's why the Symphonia model existed. That was the balance.
Yeah. So with the Symphonia model, right? The emperors were the ones that were convening the council. Not even the church would be the one at fault here. It would be the emperors.
The emperors were ordained, they were in communication with the clergy, and the clergy suggested and endorsed laws carried out by the emperor. And those things that it endorsed never changed.
Okay. But what you're talking about isn't the Symphonia model. When we talk about like the church controlling laws, right?
That's no suggesting and supporting laws. They don't have the power to carry them out and enact them into law. They don't have a force, they don't have a military or a police force.
When the leadership of the government chooses to specifically make laws based on Christianity, that's giving the church the police force and the courts. It's the government ceding that power. That is
sometimes the government, sometimes the emperor just used their own best judgment. They weren't always in complete alignment with the church, nor was the church ever in complete alignment with whatever the emperor was doing. But that was how the model worked. That's just how it worked. And that doesn't mean that the church didn't universally, consistently support laws that upheld Christian ethics. Defense of the innocent is universally supported, even if it's through force. You can use force to defend the innocent. So if you're using force to stop abortion, that is perfectly within Christian ethics. There's nothing against Christian ethics to put that into law. And that we see that being historically true.
So, on that, give me like 2 seconds to remember which verse this is, because I think there's a specific verse that I mentioned in my opening that I think we should look up the church's definition on. I just have to find which one that is. I didn't put the names of the verses next to them in my opening, unfortunately. Sorry.
Okay, do you understand that we look at the Bible as like a whole, like we don't just like cherry pick parts of it, like we take all of it together?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you account for Romans 13:4 when it tells us that the governing authority is God's servant who bears the sword to punish evildoers?
I would counter that with one of the verses that I mentioned in my opening, which is that there it is. The rulers of the Gentiles lord over them, not so with you. Right?
What does that mean? Do you have the authority to interpret the meaning of that scripture?
I mean, I think the meaning of that is pretty fucking clear. That's the Gentiles rule over themselves.
I don't care what vigilantes, what vigilante thinks the meaning of it is. I care about what my church's understanding of that verse is. I don't do sola scriptura, buddy. That doesn't work on me.
Sure, we can look up what the church's
the church's official stance on carrying and on endorsing laws is clear, and it was clear for the first 1,000 years.
So that is Matthew 20, 25 through 28. Let's see, what is the church's stance on that?
What's the verse you want to bring up?
Matthew 20, 25 through 28.
Okay, let's look it up. 20, 25 through 28.
Yes.
20. You said through 38?
Yep. No, through 28. 28.
Okay. Let's see real quick. You have it in front of you, right? Do you want to read it out real quick while I look it up?
Yeah, I can read out the verse. So Jesus called them together and said, "You know the rulers of the Gentiles lord over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as ransom for many."
And what do you think this means?
So specifically the verse 25 part, right? Because it's the part that I'm specifically quoting, is that the Gentiles specifically are to lord over themselves. That would be the people outside of the church.
Okay, let's read the Orthodox understanding of this. Let's see. Leadership of Christ's disciples, not it. In Eastern Orthodoxy, understanding Matthew 20, 25, 28 is about the character of leadership among Christ's disciples, not a rejection of all authority or civil power. Jesus contrasts the way pagan rulers lord it over people with the way leadership must work in his church. Greatness is measured by service, not domination. The one who wants to be first must become a servant, just as the Son of Man came to serve and gave his life as ransom. In the key points of the Orthodox reading of this, it says, hierarchy still exists. The church has bishops, priests, and deacons with real authority. The passage does not abolish ranks. The difference is the spirit of that authority. Christian leaders are to exercise their office as service, not as self-seeking domination. It is directed at the internal life of the church and the apostles, relationships with one another. It is not a blanket rejection of the state using coercive power of Christians participating in civil government. St. John Chrysostom and other fathers read it as a call to humility in leadership, not as a prohibition of authority itself.
Okay,
so there's your refutation by the Orthodox Church right there. Got anything else?
Yeah, so the next thing I'm going to ask is, one of the things I mentioned in my opening was Jesus himself refusing power. And obviously the whole
Did
point
he tell
of
the rulers of earth to denounce their power?
He straight up told people to follow his footsteps. So
did he say that the people holding power in the world should not hold power in the world?
I mean,
did he not recognize the authority of Caesar and said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's?
He recognized the pagan rulers like Caesar, yes.
Yeah, he recognized that there are earthly rulers, kings, right? He knew that these people existed. He didn't say that they had to denounce their power. He never said that Christians couldn't hold power either.
So I mentioned the young ruler that Jesus approached in my opening as well. Let's see.
You're going to give me your Sola Scriptura reading of that too? And I'm going to go look up cross-reference it with the Orthodox Church and have it debunked as well. Is that what we're going to do? We're going to trot another one of those out?
Yeah, we can.
You want to go? Okay, go ahead. Set up the bowling pins for me, buddy.
So this was the part that was specifically in my notes is, fuck, I just lost it. Matthew 19:21 through 22.
Okay, what does it say?
So Jesus said to the young ruler, if you want to be perfect, go and sell your possessions and give to the poor. You will have treasure in heaven, then come follow me. So he is straight up telling to a young wealthy person to sell all of his shit and follow him instead.
this is really bad for you because my priest just read this at liturgy on Sunday. So this is great. He offered all the context to this. Do you know what the context of this passage is, Vigilante?
Remembering from forever ago, but the young ruler, the young man came up to him and asked. Actually, I've got it right here.
What's
he asked,
the lesson you take from
what
this
do I
passage?
still lack?
What do I still lack? Right? It's not Jesus saying denounce what authority. This guy was an authority figure. He was just a wealthy person, right? He was a wealthy person who wanted to follow in Christ. And Christ said, well, what have you done? And he named all the things he's done. He's like, I've done all these things, Lord. What else is there for me to do? And he's like, well, if you're already perfect in all these ways, then go ahead and donate all your crap, right? Go ahead and support the poor and follow me. That's what he says to do. And the man turns around in sorrow and he doesn't want to do it because guess what? His possessions and his wealth are possessing him. And that's the lesson we are to take from this passage, not that we can't hold power on earth.
I think that lacks the context of the time period. So what were rich people back during the context of this time period?
That it doesn't matter because I don't.
No, it does.
Like governing
really
body.
Does. Because
the
in order to be
of the
rich
passage
during
is not.
feudalism,
He's
no,
not
in order
telling
to be
him
rich during feudalism, you had to be a fucking lord, which meant you had power.
Yeah, but he's not saying denounce your power because holding power is bad. He's saying give away your earthly possessions and follow me because it's the only thing you have left to do to follow me.
What does Jesus say in verse 23?
Go ahead. I'm not like a encyclopedia on the Bible. I'm like fairly new. So I don't remember every passage, but go ahead, like bring it out. We could cross-reference anything you want. And if I don't know my number, I probably remember it just by hearing it. So go ahead, read it for me.
So verse 23 is Jesus talking to his disciples. He says, "Truly I tell you, it is harder for somebody who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for somebody who is rich to enter the kingdom of God."
Again, like Vigilante, man, you would learn so much just from going to liturgy and just from talking to people who actually believe Christianity, right? Because this is another lesson where the lesson is what? That holding on to earthly possessions doesn't get you to the kingdom of heaven. Building your wealth isn't what makes you wealthy. That's the point of that verse as well. It's not saying, hey, it's immoral for you to put laws into power that uphold your morality, that if you're a Christian. That's not what it says. And you won't find the Orthodox Church will never support your argument here. It's just not going to do that.
Well, okay. So the problem there is that's missing the context of, again, the time period that we're in.
The irony here, bro.
I'm not the one missing context, because when we look at feudalism, the only people who had power and had wealth were the lords. In order to be rich, you had to be a lord in that time period.
He wasn't telling every lord to give away their power. He was telling this one guy to do it.
So during the context of the time period, when he's talking about wealthy people, he's also talking about rulers and stuff like that, because they're the ones that held power during feudalism.
No, in that verse you cited, he's talking to one person, one guy who came to him and said, Lord, I'm doing all these things you told me to do. What else is there I can do to follow in your way?
Right now I'm talking about the verse after that, the one that I just read, where he talks about the rich not being able to make it into heaven. So
what's the context for that?
During that time period, the rich were lords. The only people who were rich were the people lording over other people. So by saying that the rich can't make it to heaven, he is also saying,
Vigilante, what is the
rulers
Orthodox
also cannot make it
understanding
to
of this
heaven.
passage? What is the Orthodox understanding of this passage that you're citing? You don't know.
Not sure, but I'm sure it doesn't take into
You
the
don't know.
context
You're
of
here to do an
fear
internal
in the context
critique of my
fear.
position, and I ask you bring forth these Bible verses, and you don't know what the fuck they say or what the fuck the lesson is behind any of them. You're doing your own sola scriptura reading into it, and you think it's going to stick, and it's not. I've smacked down each one of these, and if you don't believe me, you could cross-reference what I just said with what the Orthodox Church says about these passages. Believe me, I looked through these before we got into this, bro. You've got nowhere to go. You're trapped here. You truly trapped.
So again, you acknowledged earlier that the people at the top of the church aren't infallible, correct?
Individuals aren't infallible, but the church as a whole is.
So the interpretation of scripture in some cases can be wrong, correct?
If it's not universally accepted within the church, then it is incorrect. Yeah, they have councils to decide what the word actually says.
Do these councils take into account historical context?
Yeah, I would imagine that would be a necessity. Yes.
So with the verse that we're talking about, do you think that they take into historical context the fact that the rulers at the time were the only ones that were rich?
I acknowledge that part is true, but the lesson from the verse is what you're getting wrong.
That is,
there's a lesson in that passage, right?
Yeah, the lesson being that it's going to be extremely hard for rich people to be able to actually make it into heaven. The verse that I'm specifically talking about.
That's what the verse is saying. But what's the message behind that? When it's telling you it is more possible to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to make it into heaven. Do you know what that is saying? What is the message behind that?
That rich people need to do more work in order to get into heaven than a camel would have to do to pass through the eye of a needle.
It's that true wealth doesn't come with earthly riches. That's the message.
So you're saying the message is that true wealth doesn't come from earthly riches?
Yeah, that's the message behind that verse.
You don't think it has anything to do with the wealth itself?
The message is that the earthly riches is not the wealth you want to seek as a Christian. You need to be willing to give up any earthly riches in order to follow Christ. If that's what he asks of you.
You understand that even today, being in power comes with being rich, right?
There's nothing inherently wrong with being rich. It's saying that if you're going to prioritize being rich over following God, you're going to lose.
So do you think people say, we'll go with this example. Do you think that people like Donald Trump who primarily chase riches are going to make it into heaven?
What does this have to do with the debate?
It's a side tangent. I'll acknowledge that, but we're talking about this verse specifically. I'm just trying to gauge your interpretation of this verse.
Yeah, if Donald Trump, that guy's clearly not a Christian in my book, so I don't know why you're even bringing him up.
It was literally just a consistency check, just trying to.
Sure.
If I could,
where you are here.
If I could try to bridge something here, because I've just been taking notes and whatnot, and I think, and you guys maybe correct me if I misrepresent something, but I think both sides may be making a similar jump in the opposite directions. So with your side, KungFuJoe, if we grant apostolic succession and Christ promised that the church will endure, we kind of still need the bridge from church authority to states authority because I think we're talking about enforcing the Christian values through law. And to vigilante side, even if we grant that like Christian leaders and institutions failed historically, and Christ's kingdom is not of this world, we still need that bridge from the conclusion that civil laws enforced in Christian values are therefore anti-Christian. So if we could, both sides kind of address the same question, like what specifically within Christianity determines whether the state enforcing a Christian moral value is consistent or inconsistent with Christianity. And I'll give you guys back some time there too.
Yeah, sure. So in my opening, I brought forth Romans 13:4, which tells us that the governing authority is God's servant who bears the sword, right? And the church worked worked with emperors and whoever the ruling body was who was adhering to the authorities within the church, that they did support certain laws be enacted to support Christian morality. Defense of the innocent, right? If you're going to defend an innocent person from being assaulted or killed, it is valid to defend that person with violence, and it's not contradictory to Christianity. That's one instance of it. So the church did support, and I looked it up and I cross-referenced it with the Orthodoxy's accounting of history, that it did support these laws consistently for over 1,000 years.
And my answer would be the John of Damascus quote that I used in my opening, and that it is not for the emperors to legislate for the church. So one of the saints of the church quite literally said that the emperors shouldn't legislate for the church.
That's correct. I agree with that. Legislate for the church. Do you know what that means? That means the emperor can't make rules for the church.
Yeah, that would also contradict the thing that you're talking about.
No, it doesn't say it can't work the other way around.
That would also include the church. That would also include the church sponsoring legislation. That is quite literally.
Prove it.
So emperors should not make legislation for the church.
Yeah, meaning against the church, right?
No, it says for, so that could be in behalf of or against the church.
Prove it.
Do you not understand linguistics?
Where's your proof? No. Give me the context. Prove to me that the context of that ruling says that the emperor cannot take suggestions from the church as to what to enact into law. You have proof of that?
I can find it. Sean. Sorry, Google's thinking. So I'll put this into side chat real quick. But the quick AI summary of this is that secular rulers and emperors have no authority to legislate or make laws for the church. Insisting holy traditions handed down by the fathers must strictly be unchanged as well. So it is talking about for on both types of for. It'd be for and against the church.
Is that where? Okay, hold on. Where did you put that?
I put it in the side chat of where that comes from.
I don't see the
StreamYard side chat.
StreamYard side chat. Let's see. I'm looking at it.
That's the actual book that it comes from.
I'm not seeing it. Okay. Anyway,
it's in the studio chat. I can send it to you directly on Discord.
Okay. I mean, the thing is, either way, this doesn't bail you out of your problem here, right? Because, like I said, you haven't dealt with my argument that for the first 1,000 years before the schism, the church universally, consistently supported these laws that I listed earlier. Now, it did that happened, and Matthew 16:18 is clear that the church as a whole is infallible, but the church as a whole endorsed those laws for over 1,000 years. And you still have not contended with this yet.
The church also endorsed slavery for thousands of years as well. Was the church wrong for doing that?
No, not in all cases. Not in the historical context. There were worse things.
So
than
should we bring back slavery?
No, because we don't live in the same era with the same problems that the Byzantine Empire had, right? Do you know why they were taken into slavery? Because it was a better alternative than just killing them all. Because a lot of them were POWs after a war or a battle or something like that. So you got an option, right? They're your enemy. You defeated them. You could kill them all and bury them in a fucking pit, or you could put them to work. What's the more Christian option here? Let them go and rebuild so that they can come back and fight you again?
Jesus does say turn the other cheek. So yes, that actually would be.
Jesus says there's for an individual, that's a recommendation for an individual, right? State power is already endorsed.
What is the state other than a group of individuals?
Brought up in again, I'm going to go back to my opening statement with Romans, where it says that the state is the sword of the church, basically, right? And that Christ says, "Render unto Caesar what is his." These things in tandem don't mean it doesn't mean that the authority figures can make laws that support Christian ethics. It doesn't say that.
Okay,
Again,
there's a different.
He trusted a lineage of people through the laying of hands, right, to go through the church, and these people endorsed these laws for over 1,000 years. That you're saying that's a failure of the church as a whole, right? That's what you said in the beginning of this debate. And if we rewind back the tape, I asked you the questions in this order, and now you're trying to change it. You're trying to say, well, it's individuals. And I just said, I don't give a fuck about individuals. Individuals fuck up. That's true. Universally as a church, though, for 1,000 years, right? That's the church as a single entity, consistently enforcing and endorsing these laws for the state to enforce.
That would be a failure of the church fathers, as I have said from the beginning.
Then Christ, not only is Christ a liar, but he's not omniscient enough to see the future of the people he laid hands on. So he's dumb and he's a liar.
No, because what does it say? What does it say that in Revelations that there will be multiple antichrists that will pop up throughout history? Does that mean that there can't be?
It's going to be his church for 1,000 years. His church is going to
house the
Antichrist for 1,000 years and make anti-Christian laws for 1,000 years.
Because it says antichrists. It says I'm specifically talking about the verse where it says there will be antichrist, not the antichrist.
So antichrists took over the whole church universally because the church universally for 1,000 years supported these laws. So antichrists were driving the ship for 1,000 years, right? That's not a failure.
Church, you don't think church leaders
Literally,
the
dude,
Antichrist
the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. You're telling me that an Antichrist was driving the ship on earth that is the body of Christ, the church. How is that not the gates of hell prevailing ultimately?
because the church has since corrected itself and doesn't do this stuff anymore.
So we got zombie church, bro? Is that you're going to give me the zombie church argument?
No, I'm saying that the church was wrong at one
Gates
point in
of
time.
hell
And it has
shall
since
never
corrected itself.
prevail. The gates of hell shall never prevail. Hello?
You don't think that it is possible for the church to be
No,
wrong
I
for a
don't think
period
Christ
of
is a
time?
liar, sir. I'm sorry. I believe what he says.
Christ isn't saying that people are infallible there, and the church is
I'm
made up
talking
of
about the
people.
entire church. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the individuals that make up the entire body of the church for 1,000 years. Vigilante.
Okay, do the people that are not bishops have any power within the church?
Yeah, everybody. There's a rank order of authority.
Back then, did they have any power within the church?
Who?
The regular people of the church, the non-bishops.
The laymen?
Yes, the laymen. Did the laymen have?
Didn't have authority. No, they were just the people who attended.
Okay,
and
so
followed
when the leadership is the one making mistakes, even if the layman would be able to acknowledge that what they are saying is what they are doing is against the message of God, they wouldn't be able to correct it, so that defeats your fucking argument. You're being stupid.
So the laymen they knew it was wrong, but they kept going to the church anyway.
They couldn't do anything otherwise.
They could not be Christians anymore if it didn't make any fucking sense and it was existing.
We're talking about a time period we're talking about a time period where if you didn't follow Christianity, they would kill you. Or do what they did to Maximus, the confessor, and cut out his tongue.
Follow Christianity, they'd kill you?
If you were in these countries at that point in time, yes, they fucking killed the pagans. Do you remember this shit?
So Muslims and Jews
Did you not take a
live in
fucking
the
history
Byzantine
class?
Empire? Did Muslims and Jews live in the Byzantine Empire?
In certain parts of it.
Yeah, they sure fucking did. How do you account for that? Hello?
The fact that they were servants.
So they didn't kill you for not being a Christian?
Cool. So they either kill you or make you a slave.
You lied. Great.
So your options are get killed or be a slave, right? Whenever it comes to not being a Christian.
That's a pretty generous choice right there, right? What would you pick?
No. I would pick getting killed, honestly.
Really?
I would not choose to be a slave. Who the fuck would choose to be a slave?
You could be a Christian. How about that?
And in the exact part that we're talking about, and follow the church that's being heretical?
According to Vigilante?
According to the Bible?
The Bible? I'm sorry, sir. The Bible isn't my ultimate authority. We get the Bible from the church, right? And when it comes to the Bible, sure, it's great for the layman to have it. But guess what? Tell me, Vigi, what Bible would you have read in the year 500?
Most people weren't literate at that point in time. So,
well, hold on. That doesn't even answer my question. Let's say I sent you back to the year 500 and you could read, even in whatever language they had at the time. What Bible would you have?
I don't think the first public access Bible was until King James, which was about 1,000 years later.
I don't think that's correct. But anyway, yeah, so the Bible was a liturgical tool. So if you wanted to be a Christian in the year 500, the year 700, the year 1000, the year 1100, you couldn't practice sola scriptura, bro.
Okay, so why did they actually make the Bible public if they didn't want people to be able to practice sola scriptura?
Because it's good for the layman to have, but they never said that you get to read it and make your own interpretation. You're supposed to cross-reference the interpretation with your priest. My priest gives me guided readings on the Bible. He says, okay, here, you're going to go step by step. Here's your reading assignment for, this week, this month, whatever it is. I submit to an authority when I read the Bible, and when I cross-reference the Bible. I don't submit to my brain. I don't go to brain church, bro.
So you don't think that the actual ability to read it had anything to do with being able to actually interpret it yourself? You think it was to cross-reference it with the priests?
Reading and interpretation are totally different things. And your interpretation is not even close.
When you read a book, you interpret.
Tell me why I should trust Vigilante's interpretation over the 2,000-year-old church that has a succession going all the way back to Christ. Go ahead. Give me your best. Give me your best argument for why I should trust you, Vigilante, and your brain church.
I wouldn't be advocating for you to trust mine. I would literally be advocating for sola scriptura, to actually read what it says and make your own and interpret it based off
make your own. Yeah, you slipped up there, didn't you? Make your own interpretation. Thank you. You're practicing heresy. You're using heresy to build an argument that is an internal critique. What the fuck? Do you even know what the fuck you're doing here tonight, Vigilante? Are you lost, bro? Did you not read the signs? You didn't study. I can tell you that much. So would you like to concede the debate now and talk about something else with the 8 minutes we got left? Because you're down bad, bro.
So look, just because you don't accept sola scriptura doesn't mean I'm not actually pointing out things that your Bible literally fucking says. So and things from your fucking church as well that also contradict your point.
Oh, why didn't you lead with that? Instead, you're trying to make a sola scriptura argument when I'm not a Protestant.
I literally why
would you do that to yourself, Vigilante? You did this to yourself. I'm not the meanie pants here.
Did you
I'm just showing you? I'm holding the mirror up to you. You fucked up, bro. You fucked up.
Did you not listen to my opening statement? Because in my opening statement, I didn't just read Bible verses. I also quoted priests and saints and named what priests and saints I'm talking about. I quoted Maximus the Confessor.
Individuals were wrong, right? Individuals.
If I could try to
wrong things.
If I could try to bring it, because I think earlier I seen there was a central disagreement, because both of you seem to have agreed, accept Christ's statement that the gates of hell shall not prevail, but you disagree on what that promise entails. So does that promise mean the church is protected from doctrinal corruption or institutional failure? Or does it mean that despite the corruption or failure, that the church itself will ultimately endure, is what I think Vigilante is trying to say. So if each of you could kind of explain what you believe that the promise guarantees and what's the basis for that.
Sure. So the promise guarantees that the church shall not universally practice any heresy, right? And that's the accusation that Vigilante is bringing here tonight.
So I would say that the church is not infallible, or the leadership of the church, or the people that actually make the decisions for the church are not infallible. They can make mistakes. That doesn't mean that those mistakes won't eventually be corrected.
What was my reply to this argument for the fourth time, Vigilante?
Just let him finish what he's saying,
Sure.
and then
Sorry.
you can refute it. Yeah.
Yeah. The like when the church makes mistakes, they won't eventually correct it. That like I mentioned earlier, the church endorsed slavery for thousands of years as well, and they eventually corrected that mistake. So the church can very clearly make mistakes and then eventually correct it.
Slavery was not a mistake in that historical context. You're using a presentism argument here.
I would still say
it was better to be a
context.
slave. It's better to be a slave than to be buried in a fucking pit, right? Which is what would have happened to you if you were fighting like the Nazis in war, maybe. But guess what? Hey, when you fight Christians and you lose a war to Christians, they give you an option. They're like, hey, you want to become a slave and maybe earn your way out of slavery, which also happened, or we could throw you in the pit.
When we look at this specifically, God's commandments for war, we have to look at the Old Testament because Jesus really doesn't talk about it at all, right? So what in the Old Testament, when the Jews were going to war, what did he tell them to do? Did he tell them to did he tell the Jews to take them as slaves?
I bet you're referring to the Amalekites, right?
Not everybody in the land of Canaan, not just the Amalekites.
Yeah, when those specifically, he specifically said not to take any of them as slaves. Sure.
Did he ever advocate for taking anybody as slaves outside of buying slaves from other countries?
I don't.
Or people going into slavery because of debt, because that was also an
Vigilante. You're not dealing with the dichotomy of choice here, which is you could be taken in as a slave or you could get killed and buried in a fucking mound. What do you think is the more Christian thing to do? You got to pick one, right? You got to do one of those things with your POWs in that time. You can't just let them go, right? You can't just let them go to fucking come back and plot against you again. Those are your only two options. You can make them slaves or you could kill them all.
Like I said earlier, the more Christian thing to do would have actually been releasing them. Again, quoting Jesus, the turn the other cheek.
That's for individuals. Again, Vigilante, man, dude.
What is a government other than a group of individuals, just like the church?
Yeah, certain little individual governments can. What is your question here? How does this go? You're not even listening to my argument.
You're saying,
how does this go against my argument?
You're saying that it's for individuals. The government is individuals.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's an individual prescription, not to the body of the government. The government is a body of individuals, just like the church is a body of individuals, right? It's the same concept here. There are prescriptions for individuals and there are prescriptions for the state. I read you one. I read you Romans. It says the state is the sword arm of the church that is there to punish evildoers. Hello? Like that's in there. That's a law, right? What is a law, Vigilante? How about that? Let's get down to granular, characterizations here. What do you think a law is?
A law is something that we do to punish things that negatively impact society as a whole.
And how do we enforce those laws?
Typically speaking, with jail, unless you commit egregious acts like multiple murders or multiple rapes and things like that.
Coercion?
We punish you with the death penalty.
Coercion and force?
Yes, coercion and force.
Yes. Okay, and the church that Christ commissioned did that and supported those laws. Yes.
Yes, which was contrary to the saints of the church.
So again, look, you're trapped here, Vigi. You're not even dealing with it.
Okay.
Again, we're going to go back to
what you were talking
in
about.
Matthew 16, 18. I'm going to keep fucking bashing you over the head with this, bro. You're not getting away with it. I'm not going to let you get away with it.
How do you respond to Christendom saying that Christians are forbidden to correct sinners by force, persuasion, not compulsion?
That doesn't count when it comes to defense of the innocent. If I punish somebody for abortion, it's because I consider that murder and I'm defending the innocent. Just like if I want to shut down a gay pride parade, because dudes with fucking dildos on their heads are parading around naked in front of children. I'm protecting the innocent by shutting that shit down and throwing them all in the fucking paddy wagon.
You can make that a rule without appealing to Christianity, because it is bad for development.
Christianity supports that. It supports that. And it says, go ahead and make that a rule. It's a defense of the innocent. We endorse using force to defend the innocent, Vigilante. And that's what a law is. It's a use of force to defend the innocent.
There are also other things that you guys want to put in law that are not about defending the innocent. Some of the things that you named it earlier, the idolatry.
Yeah.
Public idolatry. That's not in defense of the internet.
Sure it is. Sure it is. You're blaspheming against God in public, right? And children are there to see it, innocent children.
Not necessarily, because public idolatry would also hold on. So no, it would technically be blasphemy against God. I'll grant you that, right?
So public blaspheming against God, right? For the public to see.
That's
what public
not
idolatry is.
That would also include statues. So like the statue of Baphomet.
Yeah.
The I don't remember where that's located, but you know what statue I'm talking about. The statue
I
of
don't
Baphomet.
want to expose my kid or anyone else's kids to a statue of fucking Baphomet. Drag that shit into the ocean. Who's getting harmed? Who's being harmed for that, Vigilante? Who's being harmed for that?
Who's being harmed for the statue being there?
The innocent kids who are seeing a fucking demon. How about that?
How does seeing a statue harm the kids?
How is seeing a demon, Baphomet, harming the innocent children who are the children of God?
Baphomet is a satyr, is effectively a satyr, just like in Greek mythology.
It's a fucking demon, dude. We don't believe in it. It's contradictory to our belief system. We don't fucking want it. It hurts nobody to get fucking rid of it. It hurts nobody.
It doesn't hurt anybody to keep it.
Sure it does. It's
right.
Scary and ugly looking. It psychologically damages children.
Oh no, my eyes.
All right. I like it. So that right there is going to wrap up the hour of open floor. First off, excellent exchanges from both sides tonight. So we're going to enter the final phase of the debate here, the closing statements. Quick reminder for everyone in the live chat, the Q&A is up there already. If you got any questions for either debater, make sure you drop them in now. And remember that the PayPals and Cash Apps will be first in priority. And then and then Super Chats and Rumble Rants, and then we'll get to the Q&A questions in the YouTube chat there. Excuse me, sorry. And then if they don't fill up the whole 30 minutes. With that being said, we're going to move into closings right now. So each debater is going to get 5 minutes to make their final case here. We're going to start with KungFuJoe. So KungFuJoe, whenever you are ready for your closing statement, I will start the timer up with your voice.
Thank you, SpeakeaZy. That was a lot of fun, and it's great to be back. Thanks, Vigilante, again, for engaging. Again, no hard feelings towards you. I just want to save you, brother. I think this path you're on is stupid. You need to get the fuck off of it. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to shame you off of it. And my tool for doing that tonight was a very simple, straightforward argument that he never addressed or even got close to breaking out of. So here's my argument and premises that I brought. It's very simply this. Premise 1, Christ promised that the gates of hell would never prevail against his church in Matthew 16:18. Premise 2, the undivided church for over 1,000 years consistently endorsed and supported the legal enforcement of Christian ethics, including laws against abortion, homosexual acts, adultery, fornication, infanticide, and public idolatry. Premise 3, if the legal enforcement of Christian ethics is anti-Christian, then the church endorsed something anti-Christian for over 1,000 fucking years. Premise 4, a church that endorses something anti-Christian for over 1,000 years has had the gates of hell prevail against it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts against it. Christ clearly makes clear that the gates shall never prevail. So there's no time that it died and come back to life like fucking zombie church. That's not what Christ says, right? That's some sola scriptura BS. So the conclusion here, obviously, is therefore either the legal enforcement of Christian ethics is not anti-Christian, or Christ's promise in Matthew 16:18 is false. That is the unfortunate landmine that Vigilante stepped on here tonight, and he couldn't take his foot off of it without blowing the fuck up. So I had tons of fun with that. Vigilante, go to liturgy. And with that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Vigilante.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to Vigilante. Vigilante, whenever you're ready for your closing statement, I will start the timer up with your voice.
Yeah, so I mean, as I've said with the Matthew 16:18 thing, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that the church can't be wrong. The church can be wrong sometimes. It just means that it will correct itself. It doesn't, it's not that the church died. The church is still around. It never died off, right? The Eastern Orthodox Church, which is the one that most of you see as like the one true church, never fucking died. It was just wrong for a period of time. When it was back endorsing scripture, Jesus didn't say that the church can't be wrong. Jesus never said that people can't make mistakes, because when we talk about the church being wrong, we're specifically talking about the leadership of the church. We're not talking about the church, the church as a whole, right? The leadership of the church are the ones that make these decisions in the case of things like the Eastern Orthodox Church. And he never contended with the things that I brought up from the Eastern Orthodox Church, the saints and the church itself that contest being able to do this, right? So I mentioned it multiple times, including in my opening, the Christendom quote of Christians are forbidden to correct sinners by force. What happened with Maximus the Confessor, how whenever you actually do enforce these things on the people themselves, it ends up affecting the constituents of the church as well, if not more, and persecuting the people of the church. And one of the things that we never really got to is the Council of Constantinople and the ethnopaleism issue that was condemned as heresy. This is the drift towards a nation as Christ's body. This is the church being the one to enforce the laws. That's what we're talking about. That is Caesaropapism. Sorry, I was using that word from memory. But on the whole sola scriptura thing, right? Like I acknowledge that I'm using sola scriptura. There are verses in the Bible that support using sola scriptura. 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17, Acts 17:11, Mark 7:6-13, 1 Peter 2:9, Hebrew 4:16. There's also verses that support the other side as well. There's nothing wrong with actually reading something and interpreting it. That's what we do when we read in general. You have to, in order to understand something that you are reading, you have to interpret it. Same goes for the fucking Bible. And I'll see the rest of my time there.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. And that is going to conclude the closing statements. Great work from both debaters tonight. For everyone watching, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, make sure you hit the like, subscribe to the channel, and so you don't miss any of the debates we host here on the Swords of Reasons. We run all kinds of matchups, political debates, cultural, social issues, philosophy, trending topics, anything there's a conversation worth clashing over, we bring it into the arena. And don't forget to subscribe to tonight's debaters as well. Their links are in the description. Make sure you guys go show them support for stepping into the arena tonight and sharpening their arguments in front of us all. So now
I've also got a YouTube channel now, Easy, since I last been on here. I don't have anything on it other than a test stream, but I could drop it on the next debate I have.
Yeah, just send me the link. Just send me a link and we'll get it in the description.
Yeah, I'll put some actual like content on it first.
There you go. All right. So before I start the timer for the chat Q&A, I'm going to ask a question or two to each debater myself based on things I've heard, maybe an argument I want clarified, something was missing or deserves another pass. And then once that's finished, once those are answered, we'll go to the official chat Q&A. So tonight I'm going to start with the affirmative side. So if we grant that Christ preserved the church and through apostolic succession, how do we get from the church possessing legitimate authority to the conclusion that civil government legitimately possesses authority to enforce the Christian values?
So like I referred to in my opening, one of them is Romans 13:4. It says that the governing authority is God's servant who bears the sword to punish evildoers. There's also the verse that says, punishing a thief who breaks into your home in the night is free of any sin should you strike him down. So it is clear that we are given authority as Christians to have self-defense and defense of the innocent. And so there is nothing antithetical according to Christian doctrine or according to the original church that says that it's anti-Christian to support laws being enforced by the state.
All right. And did you have anything you wanted to say to that, Vigilante?
Yeah, I mean, that just kind of goes back to the last thing that we were talking about with the idolatry thing, right? Like nobody gets harmed there.
That's what you think.
Oh no, my eyes.
I don't want my kids to see a demon in the public town square.
Does it physically harm them?
Yeah, well, there's mental harm too, right?
Does it traumatize them? Do you get traumatized?
Sure, they could look at that fucking ugly ass thing and have a nightmare. That could be traumatic. Sure.
All right. So for my second question for you, KungFuJoe, is because like you've talked about like the historical acceptance of Christian legislation, specifically like before the Great Schism. How do we determine whether that historical practice represents like authoritative Christian teaching rather than something Christians historically practiced?
I'm not quite sure what the question is.
How would we distinguish between that historically the acceptance of Christian legislation was just something that Christian governments historically practiced from something that represents like authoritative Christian teaching, like teaching that we should do this or this is okay?
Yeah, well, there was like when we go back to like the Byzantine Symphonia model, from my understanding of it, is that the church and state were charged with different tasks, right? And then there were certain things that both couldn't do. So like the emperor couldn't determine what scripture was canon, and the church couldn't have a military or a police force. That was kind of the balance that they had to reach if you're going to be like a Christian empire and you're going to use this communication through, that's why the symbol was like the double-headed eagle in one body, because both of these heads worked together in putting their laws into reality, basically. So the church endorsed consistently throughout the first 1,000 years, especially. That was the period I focused on because there was only one church at that time. Universally, consistently supported these laws because it primarily sees them as a protection of the innocent. And that's not antithetical to Christian doctrine.
All right. And did you want to say anything to that, Vigilante?
Yeah, I that was part of one of the another thing that I had addressed in my opening. Actually, the Justinian Novella 6, the priesthood and the empire are two distinct separate things. The problem is when the church becomes where it is endorsing laws, that blurs that separation and starts to blur the domain of each into one. That's where you get the Caesaropapus. Fuck, I've got
Vigilante, can I ask you a question? If you would accept that under my Christian framework that I am the authority in my household and my family?
Under your Christian framework,
Christian framework, yeah.
And the fact that you've probably negotiated that, and that is the intent of both of everybody in the household. So yes,
correct. And so even though I'm the head of my household, I still submit myself to an authority in my priest who's a part of my church, right?
Yes.
And he gives me suggestions and recommendations on how I, as the head of my household, should govern my household.
I mean, he could potentially if you went for
yes, he does. Yeah, that's how it's historically worked, right? So what's the blurring of authority there? Is he the authority in my house, or is it still me?
There's a difference between the government and the church are. Hold on, the government and the church are completely separate. I wouldn't even say that. I would say
like my house and the church are kind of separate too, right? They're not the same entity.
Well, yes, but that's different. And I was about to get there. So the church and the church and the state would be separate but equal, or theoretically, right? They technically should be. They should be separate but equal. The church shouldn't rule over the state, and the state shouldn't rule over the church. This is how it works in America. Obviously, this is also how the model proposed by the church, the Eastern Orthodox Church itself, based off of the.
If I were to become king tomorrow, Vigilante,
mentioned,
I become king, right? By some, let's say, wave a magic wand, whatever you want to say. Hypothetically, tomorrow I'm the king of the world, right? Now, as the king of the world, I don't have to answer to anybody, but I'm going to go to my priest and ask him how I should be a good king of the world, right? If he suggests things to me on how to run the world as a Christian king, is he committing a heresy there?
According to what the doctrine from the church states, then yes, actually he would.
I give up, bro. I mean, I don't know what I don't know what else to say. I've hammered this, this is so apparent. This is how it's ran, and this is exactly what happened. And this is a failure of the church. This is church committing heresy which means that Christ is a liar. I don't know how you can escape this. In Matthew 16:18 says to never fail, never, not fail and resurrect as a fucking zombie.
All right. So then, okay, so I have two questions for your side as well, Vigilante. So the first one is because you've argued that Christ's promise of the gates of hell will not prevail doesn't mean that like Christian institutions or the leadership cannot become corrupted. And even if we were to like grant that part, how does the possibility of corruption establish that laws enforcing Christian values are themselves anti-Christian?
Yeah, so part of that corruption is coming from. Now, granted, this church doctrine that came after the time period that Joe was talking about, right? Where the church doctrine straight up says that the church and the state need to remain separate, and that the state shouldn't make laws against the church, and that the church shouldn't inform the state. Like, this is how that the church modernly and like at this point in time interprets it, right? But this wasn't the case at the time period when Joe is talking about. It was just it wasn't even that the church shouldn't rule over the state or the state shouldn't rule over the church, because they did do that. That's where we get the Maximus the Confessor situation, where he had his tongue cut out and his hand chopped off and was exiled to die. Like the reason why we have these rules, that the church has these rules in the first place, is because of the fact that they have done it in the past and realized that it was a mistake.
So the church failed.
The church made mistakes and then it has since corrected it.
Universally failed its promise for 1,000 years.
It failed in parts of its goal. It failed in parts of what it was supposed to do, but it eventually corrected itself. That's part of the whole. It's not like the church is gone. The gates of hell didn't prevail against the church.
Did Christ say that the gates of hell would prevail one time and then never again?
I think me and you have very clearly have two different definitions of what the gates of hell prevail.
You're right. Yeah, you got a sola scriptura understanding of it, which is a fucking heresy under my church. So you're not doing an internal critique.
All right. So my second question for you, Vigilante, is because you appealed to Jesus saying his kingdom is not of this world, and to Christian authorities limiting, like the saint you mentioned, limiting an emperor's authority regarding the church. So like what establishes that those teachings prohibit the state from legislating like according to Christian moral principles?
Yeah, so like even the standard that Joe himself is using, right? Like there's that you should do things to protect the innocent. I would say that we in general should should make laws to protect the innocent. That you don't have to make laws based on Christian ethics in order to do that. There are like the fucking pride example, people running around naked that Joe used. I don't think people should be fucking running around naked in front of kids. That's stupid.
Why not?
I don't know anybody that would defend that. Because
can you give
that
me
is something
a reason
that
outside of Christianity that tells you why that you shouldn't allow that?
Because we know due to psychology that kind of stuff does actually harm kids.
So what?
That the whole point of laws is to prevent harm. So because
but you're harming me. You're harming me by stopping me with force from running around naked. You're harming me. So what are you doing?
The whole point of laws is to prevent harm when it specifically when it
but you got
goes
to
against
harm
other
me in
people.
order to prevent harm. So how are you gonna solve
Yes,
this puzzle?
when you're the one committing the harm, it doesn't matter if you're the one if you have to get harmed for it to be corrected.
Oh, so you get to commit harm on me to uphold what?
To uphold you not doing things against that harm other
Why
people.
Why is the damage of the children more important than my freedom?
So this would be more of a value or consequentialist thing, right? So running around naked would prevent or would do harm to the children. As a whole, more than likely, there's going to be.
All right. What if I just said,
there,
"Fuck them
right?
kids"? I want to run around naked. Then what?
That produces trauma, and trauma is.
I don't care.
I know you don't care, but that is.
No. I'm saying hypothetically, I don't care.
Yeah, I get that. But as a society, we do care because we don't want the kids to get trauma.
But you're going to give me trauma by hauling me off to jail. So why are the kids more important? Why is the kids' trauma more important than my trauma?
Because your trauma is the consequences of your action. There's a difference.
I just want to be free. They don't have to look at me. They could look the other way. They're free to not look at my naked body as I run through the street.
I'm
Isn't
not
that the
anarchist.
gay sex? Isn't that the gay pride argument? Oh, you don't have to go there.
I'm not an anarchist. I'm not going to say that everybody should be free to do whatever the fuck they want. There are things that still have harm on society as in general.
So in gay pride parades, they walk around naked with dildos on their head and shit. You admit that's harm to children?
I would say that walking around naked in general, it would be harmful to children. Yes.
Right. So when we see a gay pride parade that's engaged in that type of behavior, we should shut the whole thing down with fire hoses and smoke bombs and load them all up in the paddy wagon, right?
No, we should arrest the people that are walking around naked. We should arrest the people that are
the
walking
majority
around
of the people participating in the parade.
We should arrest the people specifically committing the crime.
All right,
Gay
so
people, yeah.
Let me see here. Okay, it doesn't look like we have a couple super chats, but they're not questions. So I'll save those for after. But let me start up the timer here for the questions we have in the YouTube chat here. First question comes in from section 230. It says, question for Vigilante. If I say it's better that you get sick and recover rather than die, does that mean I just said it was good to get sick? Did I endorse that people ought get sick?
No, you're saying that if you get sick, it's better for you when you get sick to recover than for you to die.
But
it's not endorsing. It's interpreting what the words that are being used, right? So it is better for you to get sick and recover rather than to die. So it would be better for you to get sick and recover rather than for you to get sick and die.
Was it good that the church failed for 1,000 years? Was it a good thing?
No.
So that's not included in Christ's promise if it's not a good thing?
That doesn't mean that the church as a whole didn't.
Bro,
the church as a whole failed.
The church as a whole universally supported these laws.
That doesn't mean that everything that they did was
failed
a failure.
Bro, rewind the tape. You just said it failed for a while and then it came back online.
Do you think
it resurrected zombie church?
Do you really think that one failure is the church failing its entire mission.
1,000-year failure, multiple failures over 1,000 years, right? It's not just one law, it's multiple laws over 1,000 years. That's not a failure to you that would go against Christ's promise.
It was a failure that went against Christ's teachings, but it isn't
That's
a failure.
Not what I asked you.
It isn't the whole. It's not the church failing its entire mission.
Brother, look,
the church failing
you
one
need
aspect
to
of its
just
mission.
you need to just humble yourself here and realize you didn't do your homework and you got completely caught off guard with a megaton punch out of left field. You weren't prepared for this. Your answers and your rebuttals say so. You've got nothing here.
If I could try to bridge another gap here. So if I'm not mistaken, Vigilante, you're saying that I'm not saying the church failed. I'm saying there was a part of it or a person within it or people within it that were either corrupted or failed, but the church endured this failure. As in, like, if I was maybe to ask you, Joe, do you think it would be possible, or if it's happened already, do you think it's happened that throughout the church there was maybe bishops or members of the institution that they themselves failed and then were like cut off?
Absolutely. Yeah. I made this clear with the tree analogy earlier in the debate.
Right.
When I talked about the tree as a whole remains, even though some branches can rot away.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
Awesome.
Let's take this to like a
The
outside of
difference
the
here is that
comparison
he
perspective,
is
right?
claiming that the church as a whole failed consistently for 1,000 years because these rules that they put into law, that they endorsed into law, were
No, I'm saying
consistent
that one
for
action
1,000
is a
years.
failure. One action
Universally,
is-
dude. Universally, the whole church, the whole
yes,
of the church.
but it is one action out of millions likely that the church took during that time period.
Matthew 16:18 says, if the church universally commits a single heresy, that is a failure. That is the understanding of that verse.
All right. Next question that comes in. This one here is from Seahawk Daddy. Says, Joe, prayer is a Christian value. Would you consider a law forcing people to pray like in England in the 1500s to be anti-Christian?
That would be an anti-Christian position. We don't believe in forced conversion, but because that's not a Christian ethic. I'm saying laws that uphold Christian ethics are good, and there's nothing antithetical about that. But that is not a Christian ethic to forcefully, convert people by force. You give them an option.
Yeah, but the prompt is also about Christian values, not Christian ethics. They're
yeah.
Values.
Is there a clarification there?
Values inform ethics, but values are different from ethics.
I just wanted to kind of ask, like, if there was a law, like, if we had a law that you weren't allowed to honor any other gods publicly, say, would this be anti-Christian?
No, because public displays of basically heresies against the church would not be allowed, and we kind of went over that with
private. I'm just asking, do you think private, like if they were to find out you had a bunch of like Hindu gods in your house and they enforced that was against the law, would you say that's anti-Christian?
I would say privately, probably, yeah. I don't believe that we should, go home to home and bust down their doors and invade their privacy. I think that's something they need to iron out themselves. But there's nothing inherently wrong with making people who are against Christianity uncomfortable in a Christian society, make it, hard to practice their heresy in comfort, complete comfort, especially in public. I would say that's the difference.
So question is, praying to a different God, is that like in public, would that be idolatry?
That would be a public display of a heresy. Yeah.
Okay, so in the Byzantine Empire, right? They had Israel was part of that, and in part of that, when a bunch of Muslims immigrated into Israel at the time, instead of praying in the church, they opted to pray outside
Church?
instead.
You mean like a mosque? You mean?
No, at that point in time there was like there was like one big church. There wasn't a mosque there yet.
So Muslims went to go pray in a church?
No, the church offered for them to be able to pray in the church, and they rejected it.
So the church offered Muslims to pray in their church, to worship Allah in their church?
Yes, this is a thing that happened.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I don't know anything about this incident, and I doubt it was universally supported.
In what the Muslims did instead was they opted to pray outside specifically. Are you saying that they were committing an act of idolatry? Because they were
so this was very clear in they did allow for mosques for Muslims, and they did allow for synagogues for Jews, because they didn't want them out in public, right? That was the rule. The rule was you don't do that in public. We'll give you that's actually pretty generous for them to give them a space so that the public doesn't have to see them worship their fucking demon.
I would agree that it was generous for them to offer to let them
Okay, so what's wrong with not allowing it publicly?
No, what I'm talking about though is what the Muslims opted to do instead was to pray outside.
They don't have that choice.
They did at that point in time, and they didn't punish them for idolatry. Are you saying that they were wrong for not punishing them for idolatry, for praying outside?
The consistency of the Byzantine Empire is that they made things very uncomfortable for the groups that were not Christian. There might have been little instances where some gave more grace than others, but I'm talking about universally, right? That is my charge I'm bringing to you, is that universally the church supported laws, and with consistency, the same laws for over 1,000 years.
So did they just not always enforce those laws? Is that what you're saying?
Like I said, certain little sections or individuals may have been inconsistent, but the church universally has always been consistent.
Okay, but this wasn't the church. This was the empire that had the law that you're talking about in place.
So section of the empire. The empire was fairly big, and it was very
old. The part that I'm talking about was specifically in Israel. This was during the Byzantine Empire. I could find
one part of the entire empire, right?
It would have been the section that was Palestine at the time, but yes.
Okay, yeah. They probably made an exception because it had a very heavy Muslim, population there, and they had to seek some kind of ultimatum that would keep the peace. I'm not saying instances like those don't occur, but the consistency amongst in that empire is that these groups did not exist on the same level with the same privileges as the Christians. That's just we know that is to be historically true. I think you're muted, Easy. Okay.
Yeah, I muted myself. All right. So our next question here is coming in from. Let me make sure here. Next one comes in from the unapologetic preacher. Says, can both debate? I think he meant to put, can both debaters please provide the historically accurate description of the Reformed Protestant doctrine of sola scriptura?
My understanding, I haven't gone into this in deep detail, but I understand it was Martin Luther and the Protestants who were protesting against the against things that they saw as maybe rightfully heretical within the Catholic Church. And so he protested against, like, they protested against the Catholic Church, but kind of ignored the Orthodox Church. So it's kind of like Martin Luther was like a bit of an egomaniac and said, hey, you know, there is a true church. It's over there. Instead, he said, oh, follow me. I know what it is. Like that's my brief understanding of it. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah, so I don't remember the actual points because I grew up Protestant, so I actually learned this, but it was forever ago. So you're not too far off. He was rebelling against the Catholic Church, obviously. That was because this happened in Britain, and the Eastern Orthodox Church didn't really exist in Britain at that point in time. But the whole point was, yes, that he saw some of the things that the church was doing as heretical. So he nailed his letter that had the points to the door of his local Catholic church, and it ended up kind of creating Protestantism.
Just made that shit up, bro. Zombie church.
All right. All right. Next one comes in also from unapologetic preacher. Rev Russ says, if sola scriptura means Bible only and no other authority, then how do you reconcile the existence of the things like the Westminster Confession of Faith that was written by those who held the five solas?
I'm not saying that sola scriptura or like it means that the Bible is the only authority. Like even in the Bible, it does say that you sometimes do need authoritative interpretation to Scripture. Like I said, I grew up a Protestant. There were times where my parents even we went to our pastor for certain things, right? Because so I'll give one example that I've talked about on stream. Like my parents didn't like me playing violent video games at one point in time, right? So we went to the pastor of our church at the time to discuss it because I was basically wanting to appeal to the pastor to actually let my parents let me play certain violent video games, right? And the pastor gave an argument in my favor and basically saying that video games could be used as a tool to train people for the army of God, right? And that's literally what he said, okay? And my parents ended up letting me play certain more like FPS games, like that. There's an example, just using that as an example of I can acknowledge that even Protestants sometimes, like when they don't feel like they understand something from the Bible, will still sometimes go to their pastors.
Protestants, yeah, but those pastors don't have authority. They don't have apostolic succession, so they're just granting themselves authority. Who made them a pastor, right? Is there a succession of the laying of hands there? No, there isn't. They're completely broken away. And that's why there's hundreds of different denominations of Protestant. And that's why, and I grew up Protestant as well. I was a Methodist growing up. And nothing shows you to the door of atheism better than Protestantism. I'll give you that. You know, I have sympathy for you there, Vigilante. The thing is, the fortunate thing for me is I found my way back to the true church, because if there's a false church, if there are false churches, right, they can't all be right. They can't all be correct. So there must be one true church, right? That seems like basic logic to me, and that's what led me to orthodoxy.
All right. And our next question also comes in from Rev Russ. Says, Vigilante, what is the proper hermeneutical context by which scripture ought to be interpreted by?
I mean, I'm not sure, like in like his denomination, right? One of the things that I do personally, and I think this is generally something that everybody should do, is like look at the actual words used in like the Greek or the Hebrew when reading the Bible. And like actually I didn't do that for this debate because it was like the actual linguistics is kind of irrelevant to the debate, obviously. But I think looking at the linguistics to understand the interpretation is actually very important because linguistics tells us a lot.
Great. So where would you go to understand the interpretation in the year, I don't know, 700?
I mean, I don't think they really had linguistics experts back then, so they would have had to go
linguistics,
to
but I'm saying interpretation of the Bible. If you wanted to know what the meaning or the interpretation of a passage from the Word of God was, where would you go? You don't have a Bible.
You would
right?
go to your pastor because you didn't have a Bible.
So that was, at that time, there was only one church, right? You didn't have a choice. You didn't have like 100 different Protestant churches to go to. You had one church to go to.
Yeah. I mean, at that point in time, there was.
So why isn't that church still the one who's the authority on interpreting scripture rather than whatever the fuck Martin Luther started with his heresy?
I would say because of the fact
the church died and resurrected, zombie church.
No, because I mean, like what Rev Russ's previous question was, right? With the Martin Luther situation, the church was doing heretical acts, which obviously we're talking about the Catholic Church, not the Eastern Orthodox Church, because it wasn't the church. It wasn't the primary church in the area. The Catholic Church was, and they ended up. They felt the need to create separate churches because of heretical acts.
Because the church failed, right? That's what he thinks, that the church failed in its mission.
That is what Martin Luther believed, yes.
That's right. But he knew that there was a true church and he didn't appeal to that church. And yet that was the only church for the first 1,000 years. That church failed in its mission, then that means Christ lied in Matthew 16:18.
I mean, like I said, the Eastern Orthodox Church didn't exist in Britain at the time. So he couldn't have appealed to that church
He
without
knew who
moving
the Orthodox were. Martin Luther wasn't stupid.
Yeah, we can grant that he probably knew who the Orthodox were, but the church itself didn't exist in England at that time period. So without moving to fucking like Greece or Russia, there was no way for him to appeal to that church.
Does that mean I should go ahead and start my own church and take this Bible here and I'm going to summon me the Holy Spirit and it's going to come down into me and I'm going to read the scripture and I'm going to know what Jesus wants me to do?
So I do have chat up and I'm going to read what Rev Rush just said. So the Eastern Orthodox had absolutely no presence in the Western Europe at that time of the Reformation, and Martin Luther. Hold on.
It doesn't make what Luther did right. It doesn't make his next move correct.
I'm getting to the part of this that actually answers what you said. Martin Luther did reach out to the Eastern Orthodox Church, but was rejected.
Yeah, on what grounds? What was he rejected on?
Let's see. I'll Google that just so we're not waiting for Rev Russ to respond.
Yeah, he must have been some kind of heresy.
Let's see. He looks like he was rejected because of because of the fact that he held sola scriptura.
There you go.
What I'm finding.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, sorry, we can't let you do that, buddy. That's a heresy over here. I'm sorry we can't have your back. Down bad, bro. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you did this to yourself.
Let me see here. Here we go. I'm just trying to find ones because he asked some that I think were answered here. Rev's the only one with questions too. How about this one here? Also from Rev, if Christ has absolutely no part in the kingdoms of the world, how do you reconcile him coming to rule over all nations and smite them with a rod of iron in Revelations?
So that it depends on how you interpret that. And I'm gonna do scroll sola scriptura for this because we're talking to a Protestant, right? Well, this question's from a Protestant, so like there's a couple different interpretations of this that I've heard. So there are some people that believe that whenever it talks about Christ's kingdom being on earth, it's not necessarily talking about the like the kingdom itself. It's talking about like the earth being transformed into heaven effectively, and giving people eternal life on earth. So that would be different because heaven and earth are kind of merged at that point.
All right.
That's my understanding of Revelation. So, like, that's my understanding of that point in Revelation.
Okay. So we have another question comes here from Teriak. Says question for Vigilante. Let me put it over here. Comes from Teriak. Question for Vigilante. What is morally wrong with a Christian voting for policies that align with Christian ethics? If not moral, then what church teachings does it go against?
That's a good question, Vigi. Like if we all voted for a national ban on abortion and it gained enough steam so that, we placed enough, super conservative judges in the Supreme Court to where they just unanimously said, hey, no more abortion for anybody.
So I would say that is different from what we were talking about for the most part, because we're mostly talking about the church. Hold on. We were mostly talking about the church being the one enforcing it. I would agree. The people, but the
living body of Christ. Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about two different aspects of the church here, right? I'm getting to that. So when we're talking about the church, like appealing to the government to enforce laws, we're talking about the leadership of the church. But what the question is asking,
they're not people.
This would be democracy. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Christians voting for something policy-wise as individuals based off of their own ethical principles would be against Christian ethics.
What if the congregation of a church was told by their pastor to, in an upcoming election, to vote against abortion?
I would say that's different because it's the pastor trying to influence the politics.
He's wait, what's wrong with that?
That removes the church shouldn't inform the state when we're in a democracy, right?
The people congregation is going to go out and vote. They have that option, right? Why should they not vote in accordance with the morality if that's the morality being taught to them at their church? They're clearly learning that abortion is wrong, and now an election is coming up. Let's say the pastor didn't directly call for them to make that vote. Let's say he just focused during that period on emphasizing the importance of and sanctity of human life and protecting the innocent, and the passages and things that go against abortion, and just harped on that in his sermons up until election time. How would that be any different? Is that not going to the entire congregation to go and vote the way he sees morally?
It would be reinforcing the Christian ethics, but it would be doing so without directly appealing to changing the government.
How does voting not directly change the government?
Because it would be not directly appealing to changing the government, because while he is
they're voting to change the government.
Yes, but he's not directly telling them to go out and vote against it, which is something significantly different.
It's still the entailment of the Christian teaching that if you're a Christian and you adhere to the teaching, you're going to vote against abortion.
Okay, but you're not directly telling people to go out and vote, which is something that's different, because that is literally what the church says not to do.
Why would you? No, hold on. It doesn't say that you can't vote. What are you talking about?
I'm not saying that it doesn't say that you can't vote. It's saying that the government shouldn't be informed by the church.
But the government is informed through voting by the people. So if the people are being informed by Christian ethics,
there is a significant difference between the people's vote and the church leadership going out and directly telling the people that are the ones going to be doing the voting, or the leadership of the government how they should act.
I just gave you the example of them just saying that abortion is wrong because it's killing. That's not them telling you what to vote for. That's telling you Christian ethics, right? If they hammer that Christian ethic into your head, what are you most likely going to vote for as a Christian when you're presented that choice, Vigilante?
That you'd be voting against abortion, most likely, yes.
Then is that thanks to your pastor hammering that into you as a part of his job?
Okay, let's look at this on how we actually look at it in like American law, right? So which one of these two examples is illegal? Going out and putting out an ad and putting out propaganda, which is what you're talking about, to influence how somebody votes, or going out and telling somebody directly how they should vote.
I'm going to tell a Christian tell me how this isn't me telling a Christian directly how to vote. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? There's a vote on abortion coming up. And you and me both know as Christians that abortion is murder. Did I just tell that person directly to not to vote against abortion?
So like I'm saying,
yes or no? Yes or no?
If you mention the vote, then yes, you are telling somebody directly how.
No, I mentioned those two things separately, right? I'm like, hey, I know there's a vote coming up to ban abortion, and we agree as Christians that abortion is murder, right? And he's going to say, yeah. Did I just tell him what to vote for? Directly?
Yes.
No, I told him indirectly.
There's
a distinction there, right?
No,
I didn't say go vote against abortion. That's directly telling him what to vote for. I said premise one is, right? I presented a syllogism. Premise one is there's a vote on abortion coming up. Premise 2 is us as Christians believe abortion is murder. And I'm, leaving the conclusion, right, for him to make up in his own mind. What do you think that logical conclusion is going to be? It's going to be, I should go vote against abortion. That's not me directly telling him what to do. That's me asking him, what is your intuition as a Christian when you're entering the voting booth on this measure here?
It would still be directly influencing the vote because it is an act of coercion.
How is it coercion if I'm just is it coercion if I'm just telling him, hey, you know what? If you want to be consistent with Christian ethics, you should vote against abortion. That's not coercion. That's me presenting him with a dichotomy, right? And it's a moral dilemma for the Christian, right? They have to deal with it. They can't, they have to follow their ethics.
Okay. So when
crickets.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
When you're when you mention the vote and then follow up something after it, that is whenever it crosses the line, right? If you, with like the example you were giving before, where they're just doing the sermons based off of abortion, that would be the line of propaganda. The anything past that, like directly mentioning the vote, would cross into coercion.
Okay, fine. I'll only use propaganda. Is that okay?
Propaganda is fine.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go put a bunch of posters of Jesus and it says abortion is murder. That's propaganda, right?
That would be propaganda, yes.
Okay, great. That's going to influence Christians to follow their morality and vote against abortion. That's a direct influence to government. That's at least what we have here.
All right. Geoverse put in a last minute question here for 5, said, if I tell you abortion is bad, is that coercion? Right. And real quick too, chat, if we it doesn't look like you guys hit the 100 to do the after panel tonight, so it looks like you guys don't want to do the after panel unless someone wants to send in the what do we at? What do we need? 58 for an after panel, all right? So unless someone wants to send that in quick here, well, Vigilante answers when we wrap up, we're just going to wrap it up. But go ahead, Vigilante.
Yeah, so no, if you just telling somebody abortion's bad is not coercion. It crosses the line into coercing somebody's vote, right? Because that's what we're talking about. When you say, hey, there's a vote coming up, we all think that abortion's bad, right? Like that's whenever it crosses that line. Like when you're actually mentioning the vote or like directly telling somebody, hey, you should vote this way, that's when it crosses the line into coercion.
Oh, okay. So I could just not mention the voting part. I could just time my sermons to be about or to highlight the importance of life, be fruitful, go forth, be fruitful.
Yes, that's what it falls. That's what it falls under propaganda. That is literally what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to do endless propaganda. It's going to directly influence the government in my favor.
We do that anyways.
Okay, great. I'm just promoting more of that, right? Like I'm promoting that. That's kind of what I'm doing here tonight. I'm here to make Christianity look better than the alternative. And I think I've done pretty well at that. This is pretty lopsided right now. And, to everybody watching, I know it looks lopsided, but hey, if you support the stream, there might be somebody that could jump backstage and help Vigilante out here because he needs a mayday pretty badly.
All right. So that there is going to wrap up the Q&A. I want to say thank you to everyone in the live chat for all the questions and the engagement and also the support. It's what allows me to keep bringing you these debates and the entire Swords of Reason experience week after week. So I appreciate every single one of you. And of course, a huge thank you to our debaters for stepping into the arena tonight and sharpening their ideas in front of us all. All right. What's going to happen here next, since we didn't hit for the open panel? If you guys want to just give yourselves a shout out, tell everybody where they can find you and whatnot before we get into the outro here. Whatever one wants to start, go ahead.
Who's first? Go ahead, Vigi.
Whoever wants to start. Yeah, whoever wants to start.
Yeah. I'm the Vigilante TV. I primarily do politics. I'm actually just now starting to get back into streaming. I mostly stream on YouTube. My girlfriend's going to be editing my VODs, and so I can start putting more stuff up on YouTube. I also do gaming content and debates. I might be doing a pre-show debate in Nashville for Word War Debate. Still waiting to hear on that one. But yeah, this was fun. Have a good night, everyone.
Word. Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight. And KungFuJoe.
That's right. Yeah, thanks again. SpeakeaZy. Thanks again for Vigilante for coming through and having the debate. It was fun. It was spirited. I hadn't done it in a while. Glad to be back. And, like I said earlier, if you don't know me now, you will. I'm going to keep plugging away at this. I hate leftism. I hate fucking feminism. I hate atheism. I hate evolution. All these ideas are disgusting to me. They're silly, ridiculous, and illogical. And I do it partly because it's easy. So please send me better challengers. I'll take on whoever you got. Just send them my way. And with that, I hope to see you all again pretty shortly. Thank you.
Oh, I'm muted, of course. Awesome. Thank you again. Thank you both for coming in tonight. And again, thank you to everyone in the chat. What we're going to do here, we're going to roll the outro. It's going to, at the end of the outro, it's going to send you guys over to Teriax. He's going to start up a little earlier tonight for you guys. So after the outro, it's going to send you guys over to Teriax. And one last reminder before we run the outro, make sure you guys go subscribe to both the debaters, all right? And if you're enjoying these debates, hit the subscribe on the SpeakeaZy channel as well so you don't miss any upcoming Swords of Reason battles, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. This is where logic meets passion. All right? Love you guys. God bless everyone, and have a beautiful night.
Into the circle where the echoes collide. Truth through the static, no place to hide. Iron tongue, sharpened fire in our breath. We dance with conviction on the edge of death. Your words are bullets, mine are storms. Ideas forged where lightning forms. No retreat, no treason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through lies with skill, precision. No faith, no fear, just raw collision. We clash our swords of reason. Facts burn brighter than a prophet's flame. Egos crumble, but but the truth remains. Every scar, a mark of thoughts crusade. In the battlefield of minds we've made. Speak your truth, but bear the cost. Every claim can still get lost in the war of voice and vision. Feel the friction. We clash our swords of reason. No silence left for indecision. Ideas break with loud precision. We clash our swords of reason. Strike me with logic, I'll plead my proof. We cut through chaos to carve out truth. Let the sparks fly, let the echo scream. This is no debate, it's a metal dream. We clash our swords of reason. In the storm of thought's collision. Forged in fire, pure precision. We clash our swords of reason. Reason bleeds but never dies. No surrender, no retreat. In the war of words, we find out.